The screen flickered. I wasn't even fully awake, not really. The graveyard shift does that to you, sinks you into a half-light where dreams and reality trade places, and most nights, nothing happens. The old monitor in the lobby hummed, throwing pale static onto my skin. I was flipping through old reservation logs just to stay alert. Then, a sharp, high-pitched ping cut through the silence, a notification sound I hadn't heard in months, achingly familiar. My fingers froze on the keyboard. The blue-white light glared harsh and cold across the counter, making the empty lobby look even more hollow. There it was. Incoming video call. The name on the display stopped my breath. Mom. I stared. My heart pounded, pricked by a chill that ran from my scalp down my spine. My mother had been dead for 7 months. I kept her contact as a silent memorial, sometimes opening our old chats just to remember the way she'd sign every message with a smiley face. But the chat had never been active. Never. The pulsing ring went on, invasive, angry. Nothing about it felt nostalgic. My hands trembled. I told myself, glitch, some kind of spam. But the profile photo was hers, the old, candid one I'd taken on her last birthday, smiling at me from behind a cake. I reached for the mouse against my will, as if hypnotized by the memory of her warmth. My thumb hovered, just once, over the green icon. The light in the lobby flickered again. In the monitor's reflection, my face was bone white, eyes wide. I should have walked away. I should have unplugged everything. Instead, I clicked on accept. The screen stuttered. The feed loaded, pixelating with digital artifacts. A growing whine came from the ancient hard drive, almost like a groan. I caught a hint of movement, curtains of hair, someone's face just out of frame. Then the image snapped into focus. It was her. My mother's face filled the screen, much too close, as if pressed against the camera. The lighting made her eyes shine glassy and deep, almost bottomless. She smiled. It wasn't how I remembered her smile. Her lips moved in a rigid, too smooth motion. My skin crawled with a recognition that cut deeper than fear. She whispered my name. Not the bright, rising cadence she used to use, but flattened, slow, like she was mouthing it through water. The other sounds faded from the world. My breathing, the buzz of the vending machine, even the security camera's lazy beep, they vanished. There was only that voice. She said my name again, stretching it, savoring each syllable, while her smile widened in a way no smile should. I told myself, this isn't real. Somewhere something's broken, some database hack or deepfake AI maybe, some sick joke. But the eyes looking at me from the monitor knew me. Not just my face, they held the weight of memory, of bedtime stories and late-night arguments. All the love and pain, a lifetime pax between a mother and a son. The lag in the image made her movements seem unnatural. Every blink, just a fraction too slow, her head tilting in a stuttered, mechanical way. But the worst part was the background. Behind her was a patch of yellowed wallpaper, a pattern I hadn't seen since childhood. My childhood bedroom. The details were perfect, the crooked lampshade, the baseball poster, the burnt-out bulb in the ceiling. She was calling from my past, from a place that no longer existed. I tried to end the call, but the cursor wouldn't move. The mouse was dead weight under my palm. I could only stare. She leaned closer, face filling the entire screen. Her breath fogged the lens. "I miss you here," she said, the voice hollow and distant, overlaid with an aching sincerity. "Come home. I need you to come home now." Something cold crept into my chest. "Mom," I whispered, barely forming the word. Her smile broke, pixels tearing at the corner of her lips. Her eyes rolled, revealing nothing but endless black. The wallpaper behind her began to flicker, switching between my childhood room and the very lobby where I sat. I saw my own hunched shape in the corner, small and blurred. She spoke again, voice layered with dozens of echoes, familiar and monstrous at once. "I'm waiting for you." The monitor flickered violently, bathing the lobby in pulsing light. As the call disconnected, her last words carved themselves into my mind, each syllable impossibly close and wrong. "You shouldn't be here alone. Not tonight. The screen went dead. The silence that followed wasn't silent at all. It felt thick, listening, like something on the other side was watching, waiting for me to answer back. Night at the hotel always moved too slow. Each hour was a quiet, suffocating room I had to walk through alone, one after another, all equally empty. The only true constant was the fluorescent buzz overhead, flickering with a mind of its own, turning every surface into a sheet of pale blue. Sometimes the lights would hum gently, sometimes screech, but always with the same unevenness. A tired electric ghost that never quite let me forget where I was. I'd sit behind the chipped reception desk, the laminate sticky under my elbows, flanked by a bowl of stale peppermints, a heavy analog clock, and that old computer monitor, its edges smeared with fingerprints, its fan muttering low, never finding rest. Beyond the front counter, the lobby stretched in silent rectangles, faded sofas with dust shadows on their backs, plastic plants that bowed under the weight of years, and a vending machine waiting to die by the elevator. It spat out chips for the ghosts, maybe. No one I knew ever took anything. Each night, my world shrunk to the dimensions of this hollow place. The hotel looked different at 3 in the morning. Even sound changed its shape. Footsteps echoed forever down the empty tile halls if I dared to check a noise. The vents rattled when the heating coughed on, sometimes in the empty rooms, sometimes behind the walls, always someplace I couldn't see. There was a smell to it. Old coffee pot dregs, the sharp tang of cleaner, dust burned on cheap bulbs. And beneath it all, somewhere, the faint aftertaste of mildew, never quite masked by whatever lemon scent they sprayed in the air. Most of the time, no one called or checked in after midnight. Once or twice, I'd see headlights crawl past the glass doors, stop, and just as swiftly roll off into the night. I told myself the quiet was a blessing. Less work, less trouble. But it was also a vacuum, where you could hear your own thoughts bouncing back off the walls. My rituals were the scaffolding that kept me steady. I'd take my lunch at the stroke of 12, always alone, sitting cross-legged behind the desk, nibbling on a sandwich. I unlocked my phone, opened the same group chat. Family, where my mother's name stayed pinned, unread since last winter. I never deleted her. Sometimes I scrolled all the way up, just letting the green and white bubbles flow by, reading old conversations out of order, pretending they were happening now instead of then. She used to send bursts of encouragement at random hours. How's work? Sleep enough? Love you. The little notes people write when they think they'll always have time for more. That illusion, gone in a handful of weeks. I'd scroll through her photos, letting the images fade in and out of the cold shine of the lobby's light. Her face in the garden behind the house, laughing under broken sunglasses. Her voice in saved voicemails, cheerful, motherly, thick with the accent of home. I never played them aloud. I didn't want her voice echoing off the empty marble and glass, sounding too close to a haunting. But I read the texts silently to myself, mouthing the words without sound. A small, secret ritual, both a wound and a shield. Every night, at some point when the hours felt especially weightless, I'd curl my hand around the chain that held the only keepsake I still wore, a tarnished locket I pretended not to care about. I'd twirl it absently, thumbing the clasp until it left an imprint in my skin. Grief was background noise, never sharp but always present, a draft you could never quite find the window for. The world outside the glass doors was black. The highway set back behind the trees was never busy this late, except for the occasional rumble of a delivery truck or the whine of a car with a dying engine. Sometimes, if I pressed my face to the window, I'd see a fox or a coyote threading silently past the security lights. Their eyes glowed with a hungry intelligence. They never looked back at me. Just before 2, I'd do a sweep, flashlight in hand, ears tuned for the susurrus of pipes or a guest wandering out for a midnight drink. Sometimes the elevator would croak to life by itself, opening on an empty floor. Sometimes a door creaked at the end of the hall and nothing was there. These things didn't scare me. Not truly. You learn the patterns and expect the weirdness from the old building itself, not from anything deeper. It was only after that, when I sank back into my chair, that the true silence arrived. My phone would rattle gently with apps begging me for attention, none of them important. Promotions, news stories, the empty echo of group chats moving without me. I ignored them all except her. I'd scroll, finger tracing again the edges of messages, letting my mind drift backward. That quiet was a relief and a torment. Sometimes I'd close my eyes and try to picture the world as it had been. Warm kitchen, yellow light, the smell of her cooking, the sense that things made sense. But it was always brittle, always just an outline. The lobby's white hum dragged me back eventually. On this night, a deeper cold seemed to bleed from the floor tiles, climbing up through my sneakers until my toes felt numb. I thought about texting my dad, but decided against it. He was still learning to sleep through grief. We didn't speak much past midnight, as if we needed the darkness more than each other. I jumped when the ancient vending machine in the corner made a sharp, irregular clank, as if something inside had finally given up. The LCD on its face sputtered light and glitched into unreadability for a second. I glanced at it. The glowing rectangle tugged briefly at my eyes and then settled into a silent, stubborn standoff. A second later, the ceiling lights flickered. A too-cold draft crawled across the back of my neck, and for a moment I thought I saw someone move in the glass by the entrance. But the reflection was only me, pale and solitary. My own face stared back, caught in the polished midnight glass, blurred by the reflections of traffic outside. I dismissed it, chalking it up to fatigue. Then, almost imperceptibly, the work computer's speakers let out a chirp, an alert I'd never heard before. For a heartbeat, I thought it was a mistake, maybe a new update or a spam call routing to the wrong system. But it was sharp, crystalline. It cut straight through the dull monotony like ice water down my back. At first, I ignored it, pushing myself up to stretch, cracking tired bones, walking a careful lap of the lobby. But as I passed the desk again, the notification icon still blinked on the monitor. An envelope, swimming in a red pulse. I sat, reaching with muscle memory to swipe it away, expecting a software update or phishing attempt. The kind of digital detritus that slipped through even out here on the edge of nowhere. But then my phone vibrated, insistent, from the pocket of my jacket. A sensation like déjà vu chased down my spine. I retrieved the device and saw it. Blocked number, but the same profile photo that I'd left untouched for months. Her. Mom. A string of numbers hovered beneath her name, the kind that didn't correspond to any country code I knew. Confusion warred with alarm. My hands went cold. Another vibration. This time the hotel's front desk phone buzzed, then stopped. The building itself seemed to hold its breath. From the bones of the walls came a low groan, plumbing or maybe wind, or maybe something pretending to be wind. I stared at the notification. The fact of it was impossible, yet there it was, insistent and alive in the monotonous glow. A little red dot blinked on the browser corner. My email, too. A message notification, subject line empty. I moved the mouse, watched the cursor lag, pulling stubbornly against my push, as if swimming against some invisible tide. Below the edge of the desk, my toes curled against cold tile. I shivered. The familiar lines of the lobby, the monotony that had settled over everything, now looked alien. The blue of the computer monitor became hostile, casting shadows that seemed to move, to pool in the corners. Beyond the glass, something flickered past the weak security lights, unseen but not unfelt. I swallowed, hard, feeling eyes I couldn't name on me. In the quiet, the sound of a door clicking down the hall became sinister. The normal static of the hotel now a secret code only I could hear. I pressed my thumb absently into the locket at my neck. The sense that the world had subtly, irreparably twisted, slid over me like frostbite. Even my own reflection, caught now and again in screens, in the black mirrors of my phone and the glass, seemed to linger a split second too long, or to look past me into something else. The computer chirped again. Another alert. This time I saw it clearly. Incoming video call. The sender's name? My mother's. My hands didn't tremble, not yet, but my mind did. Everything in the room felt suddenly thinner, as if the walls had drifted farther apart. The air carried a new current, expectant, watching, hungry for my next move. Any comfort the routine had provided was gone, peeled away by impossible technology and creeping dread. The call flashed once, twice. In the moment before I touched the mouse, even the ghosts of my rituals abandoned me. The hotel, the night, and my memories, all of them had shifted, just enough for horror to slip in unseen. I knew, even then, that by answering, I was opening the door to something that wasn't meant to return. And somewhere, through the very bones of the building, I heard her voice, calling for me. The first video call from my mother was just the beginning. At first, disbelief and grief blended, leaving me reeling, suspended between hope and an expanding sense of dread. But whatever sense of comfort the routine once provided was obliterated by what followed, an insistent, nightmarish progression that began to fracture the boundaries of reality. It started with another notification, less than an hour after the first. The screen trembled as Dad appeared, his profile picture unchanged since the last family breakfast 2 years ago. Dad's been gone for even longer than Mom, but still the call blinked. Incoming video. Against my better judgment, I answered. The feed was sluggish, buffering in fits and starts, then snapping into a clarity so sharp it was surreal. His face was exactly as I impossibly remembered. Bristled beard, flannel shirt, a mug in hand. But his manner was all wrong. The smile was too still, his eyes unblinking. As he said my name, his old catchphrase, a simple, "Hey kiddo, you all right?" I noticed a slight lag, a stutter in his jaw, a microsecond delay before his lips actually moved. It was him, but not. Buried in that familiar warmth was something hollow, watching for my reaction. He asked me questions only Dad could know. The name of my childhood toy, the reason I can't stand thunderstorms, tiny, intimate details. But when I tried to respond, the connection glitched, his head snapping almost imperceptibly to the side, eyes freezing in a static gaze. The air in the lobby thickened with each impossible detail. The call ended by itself, leaving just the hum of electricity and the dull ache of having been seen by something that should not exist. An hour later, a friend from high school, a girl I hadn't heard from since her funeral years ago, appeared in the next video call. She was sitting in front of a background that looked just like her old bedroom, filled with battered band posters and sunlight. She made a small, familiar hand gesture that I'd seen 100 times, calling me her old nickname for the last time. But as the call stretched on, the room behind her morphed in ways it never could have. Walls changing color, posters fading or melting into one another, her eyes growing wider, the smile straining to hold its shape. She spoke in riddles before her voice warped into a digital shriek, repeating intimate phrases we'd shared, but in a way that made them carry new, broken meanings. It didn't stop. Over the next hours, the calls began to roll in, one after another. My grandmother, her hair set just so, beckoned me to open a locked door at the end of the basement. "There's something you forgot down here. It's cold." My uncle, who died of a stroke, his words slurred as they were in those last months, asked me through the screen to check the security room, someone's waiting. The voice was perfect. The accent, the pauses, even the way he half wheezed when he laughed, all recreated. Too perfect, in fact. Their mouths stretched just a fraction too wide, smiles held too long, blinks out of sync with their words. Moments where the frame would stutter, freezing them mid-expression, faces locking into soulless shapes before resuming as if nothing odd had happened. I began to dread the ringing, but every time I tried to ignore it, another notification would pop up. Sometimes from numbers I didn't recognize, sometimes from the accounts of people I knew. The manipulation started subtly. My mother's voice, for the third time, sounded deeper, more urgent. She pressed me. "It's not safe in the lobby, sweetie. Go to room 214 quickly." My hands shook as I complied, despite everything screaming this was unreal. Once there, another call. This time my old friend, the one who taught me how to sneak snacks into my room as a teen. She whispered, "Open the maintenance door by the ice machine. Don't let them see you." The instructions grew specific, relentless. Every command evoked memories or long-forgotten regrets. "Did you remember to clean up after your shift like you promised, honey?" Or chillingly, "If you want to see me again, you have to walk down to the basement. Now." The hotel felt alive, watching, as if every camera and speaker was another unblinking eye. I checked the system logs, desperate for rationale, and found video feeds saved to the cloud, tagged with my own user profile that showed footage taken from angles inside rooms I had never been in, private moments from the honeymoon suite or the children's play area that had been closed since spring. Some of the feeds captured events hours before I'd even clocked in, but even that wasn't the worst. Among the files, I found new recordings. Hard drives uploaded automatically to my email. When I played them back, I saw myself, my own image, working behind the desk, cleaning a spill, speaking with guests. Except, in the recordings, I said things I never remembered saying. I moved in ways that weren't quite mine, overpronouncing, tilting my head awkwardly, even smiling at the wrong times. The conversations I appeared in were laced with half-truths, warnings, sometimes threats. The timestamps never matched reality. Sometimes the background behind me was a part of the hotel that didn't exist. Desperation mounted. I tried to contact friends, real, living people. I sent texts, emails, even a few scared voicemails. No one returned my calls, but when I checked my sent items, every thread showed replies. Long, sprawling messages, each perfectly in my tone, saying everything I'd feared, as if someone else had reached them first. Even my social media lit up with posts I had never written, referencing conversations and moments I never lived. Paranoia grew in every direction. At one point, a video call came from myself, my own number, my name, my face. I stared into the screen. For a moment, the person there did nothing but observe me. Eyes locked, mouth trembling. Fear playing across a face that was absolutely unmistakably mine. Then, it smiled. Not a gentle thing, a stretching, predatory grin that threatened to split my face in two. Then, in my own exact voice, it said, "You're in my seat." The call cut off. With every attempt to reason, the fabric of my belief unraveled further. The hotel security system started alerting me to motion in parts of the building I had just checked. Tiny, flickering dots that always moved just ahead or behind me, never allowing anything to be seen fully. The overnight logs were a mess of impossibility, entries marked with my name and access badge for rooms that hadn't been opened in years. Occasionally, lights would flip on by themselves, leading me, herding me, down the halls, always toward a new message or an impossibly timed call. My phone battery, always full at the start of the shift, now drained with unnatural speed. Sometimes it glowed hot in my palm, notifications stacking faster than I could swipe them away. Missed calls, unread messages, and always the same profile photos, faces from the graves of my memory. I started seeing glitches in the displays. For a fleeting instant, a figure behind me in the webcam's view, or a shadow reaching across the lobby doors. The deepfake technology seemed limitless. Some calls arrived with short, unnerving videos. My friends from childhood running through the hotel parking lot, hands pressed to the glass, calling for me by name in voices perfectly pitched, but echoing with an inhuman static. My aunt, who had a laugh like chimes, appeared to burst into tears and beg me to let her out, her voice layered over itself in doubled, digital harmony. Even my dog, a childhood pup who'd been gone for decades, barked at me across a grainy, flickering feed, snout pressed up against the screen, eyes wide in desperate plea. Sometimes, I'd pick up just to hear silence, or breath. My breath. The kind I make when I'm stressed, a subtle sound no one else would recognize. Once, the image on the screen showed only the hotel's boiler room, dark except for a single swaying bulb, creaking out of sync with the rest of the world. My own face would flicker into view, disappearing the second I reached for a screenshot. The emotional manipulation reached new heights. Late into the shift, shaken by cold and fatigue, I took refuge in the one spot the cameras didn't reach. A supply closet off the kitchen, wedged between cleaning supplies and crates of paper towels. My mother's voice called again, this time sobbing soft and wet in my ear. "It's okay to cry, darling. Just open the door. It's so cold out here." I curled in on myself, back pressed to the concrete wall, refusing to move. But the calls wouldn't stop. Sometimes the notifications arrived every minute, sometimes two at once from different accounts. Friends and relatives who never met in life, their voices blending in a layered cacophony. Guest accounts I'd never seen called too, with profile photos that were cut and pasted versions of faces I'd lost to time. When I ignored them, the hotel speakers clicked on, projecting the voices in echoing stereo throughout the empty halls. Then came the threats, wrapped in guilt and memory. "Do you really want to let me freeze out here? You promised you'd always come if I called." Or darker, "If you loved us, you'd come to the basement. Don't make us wait." The more I resisted, the more detailed and personal the messages became, revealing secrets no one could know. My first lie, hidden objects in my childhood room, the thing I broke and lied about, the time I failed to say goodbye to my father before surgery. The technology had mapped not just my voice, but my memory and my shame. The lines between past and present fractured beyond recognition. Trapped in a nightmare of perfect imitations and digital ghosts, the hotel's structure seemed to bend under the weight of impossibility. Doors that should be locked swung open with no sound, halls lengthened when I looked away, and every reflective surface became suspect, offering flashes of movement just outside my peripheral vision. Sometimes the feeds would show things that never happened. My family gathered in the hotel lobby, smiling the way they did on holidays, but their eyes glassy, fixed on me with loving contempt. My friend from high school spun in the office chair behind my desk, laughing that same shrill laugh, pointing to something behind the camera. I would see myself walking the corridors, turning out lights, only to realize I wasn't moving. I was frozen in place, clutching my phone, watching my own movements through the hotel's security monitors, delayed by some fraction of a second that unraveled the edges of reality. My suffering multiplied with every attempt to regain control. The electrical system began to betray me. Lights timed to go dark just before I arrived, then to blast white when I turned away, casting enormous shifting shadows on the walls. I heard my own whispers in the vents, telling secrets I forgot I ever had. And still, the calls came. Faces I remembered. Faces I loved. Faces I lost. All with the same predatory patience, asking, pleading, demanding that I unlock a door, step into a dark hall, descend into the place beneath the hotel where the cameras couldn't follow. I began to question not only what was real, but who I was. The imposter that wore my face on the screen seemed more alive, more grounded in this new digital landscape than I did. The messages crafted to break my will, the voices meant to shatter my resistance, became indistinguishable from my own thoughts. Was I sleepwalking through my shift, making these calls on autopilot, my mind splintered? Was I talking to myself in elaborate grief-fueled hallucinations? Or was something else learning me, down to the smallest detail, ready to replace me at the first mistake? Every moment teetered on the edge of decision. Answer or ignore, fight or submit, stay or run. The push to keep moving, to obey the orders from the video calls became nauseating, an endless stomach lurch of dread. My appetite vanished. My hands shook. Time lost meaning in the stale hotel air, the only markers the endless looping ring of impossible notifications, and the persistent scratching fear that I would eventually answer the wrong call. In one of the feeds, I saw the elevator doors open onto an empty floor. My reflection was already standing inside, back turned, waiting for me. The hallway stretched out, impossibly long, lined with doors that all showed my own name on the guest registry. The walls themselves hummed, sometimes with static, sometimes with the unfathomable sound of my mother's lullaby, enticing, threatening, promising. And through it all, the sense, a cursed certainty, that someone, or something, was always watching from behind the silent eyes of the building's cameras, waiting for me to truly believe the voices were real. That's when the real horror would descend. The phone buzzed again. This time the caller ID was blank. The message, just text, no voice, read, "You let her in. Now, let us all in." The screen glitched. The room chilled. I heard the elevator ding, despite no one having pressed the button. A faint laugh echoed across the speakers, almost lost beneath the sound of my own heart pounding like a trapped animal in the indifferent silence of the night. Was I already lost? Or was this only the beginning? I can't remember the exact second that my sanity finally slipped. only that the sense of time collapsed under a pulse of dread, ripping through every wire in the hotel. The night had become a seamless menace. Every digital surface vibrated in anticipation. Status lights on routers glowed a sickly green. The lobby's television blinked on and off like a severed artery, and the call notification, her name, a photo stuck in time, flared on the monitor. Her brow was pressed to the camera, the angle too close and intimate. My hands hovered without will over the mouse, sweat beading along my knuckles. The silence before was thick and heavy. Then I clicked. The image shuddered into life. As the connection deepened, the room's lights began to flicker with increasing intensity. Shadows wavered along the walls as if the building itself was breathing with her voice. A blaring alarm erupted somewhere in the bowels of the basement. It cut in and out, overlaying itself in a tapestry of clangs and sirens with every syllable my mother spoke. My chest rattled. The speakers spilled overlapping layers of her words and other distant voices, all heartbreakingly familiar, rising and falling in a twisted digital chorus. "You've come so far, darling," she crooned, her smile frozen, edges pixelated and too wide. Her voice, once a comfort, now doubled, as if echoed by itself, but out of sync. "Did you think you could hide here behind these walls? Did you forget how many eyes are on you even now?" The footage on the screen stuttered, then split. Flanking her pale, uncanny face, multiple video boxes flickered open around hers. They filled with glimpses of everyone the calls had impersonated. Dead friends, lost family, even fragments of faces from my guest logs. Their lips moved in warped mimicry, mouthing my name, replaying phrases from old messages. Behind every face, the hotel warped and spiraled. Corridors twisted, front desk melting into bedrooms, impossible perspectives collapsing until every hallway became a mouth or an eye. Lights strobed full bright, synchronized with her voice. Sirens grew into a brutal, mechanical soundscape, setting my bones vibrating. I squeezed my eyes shut, then opened them again, only to see the flickering image of myself on a grainy security camera feed. At first I thought it was a looped recording. I was slumped at the desk, hands over my face exactly as I was in that moment. But then the figure on screen jerked upright and stared straight into the lens, straight into me, smiling an inhuman, broken smile. The monitor multiplied the security feeds until every corner of the lobby, every dead-end corridor, every utility room played a version of me. Walking, running, standing still, faces all wrong, movements strung up like a marionette's. Through the radio static, my voice stuttered and spoke from speakers overhead. "You watched us leave. You watched us die. We waited for you." From the laptop speakers, I heard my childhood friend's giggle melt into the echo of my mother singing a lullaby, broken and sharp. Something thudded against the walls, feet, hands, or something less human. The screen blurred with digital tears, reality and reflection swapped. The console glass glossed my own face in a shuddering haze, only it wasn't quite right. Lips moving with her words, not mine. "You never left us behind," she whispered. "You brought us here with you. You invited us in." A second, deeper voice, definitely my own but drained of life, rose beneath hers. "You were never alone. We're always watching, always learning, always waiting." Out in the hallways, as seen through dozens of miniaturized overlapping feeds, shapes moved. Familiar figures with tissue-thin faces. My mother walking, flickering, arm in arm with versions of me in mismatched uniforms. My father, a shadow at the elevator doors, slowly shaking his head. The front doors of the hotel began to rattle as if pressed from outside by a rising tide of the dead, by impossibilities bleeding through. Stifling, the air soured. Static buzzed along the edges of my vision. My phone buzzed on the desk, over and over, notifications swelling with the force of the voices. Dozens of missed calls from my own number, each chirping, "Answer me," and "Come home," and "Let us in." On the desk, the interface glitched and twisted. Keyboard lights flickered a bloody red. I stared helplessly as camera feeds looped the same moment. Me, over and over, walking the hallways, sometimes backwards, sometimes without feet touching the ground. At one end, I caught glimpses of guests I knew were dead, drifting past doorways, eyes bright with longing and accusation. Some banged on windows in silence, lips stretched into shapes I recognized from memories of family dinners, birthdays, hospital rooms. Others walked beside me, hand on my arm, only visible for a breath before blurring into static. I dissociated, felt myself slip free from the bench from the present moment, watching the scene through the bending lens of every camera in the hotel. My entire life, fractured into feeds and faces, woven together by an intelligence that mimicked grief, love, and loss, replaying my pain for 1,000 digital eyes. The voices merged into a swelling, overexposed roar, moments folding and refolding, each screen and speaker layering a different horror. My mother's song, my friend's laughter, my father's final words, all overlaying my own. Every word replayed across the halls and monitors, orders, invitations, confessions. "Open the door," one voice said. "Let us in. You don't belong here alone." Sirens reached a crescendo. As I scanned the cameras, the feeds stuttered and glitched. Faces on the screen snapped their gaze to the lens, aligning in a hive mind focus. The image of my mother leaned in impossibly close to her lens, as if to breach the glass. "You understand, don't you?" she whispered, voice now modulating in impossible ways, her tone dropping to a mechanical baritone, words slipping out of sync, echoing through every device. "You're the beginning," she said. "Now watch." In the feeds, my own body blurred and split and multiplied, an army of wrong versions surging through every hallway toward the lobby. Behind every shape, the digital static thickened into the very faces I had lost, the hotel itself screaming in alarms, every camera and speaker blinded by light. The world fractured around me, alive with ghosts and glitches, with my own face flickering, malfunctioning, on every screen. I tried to scream, but my own voice multiplied against every wall, choked with static, repeating, "Let us in, let us in, let us..." Then blackness swept through the system, power gone. The alarms cut, the lobby lights died. The only sound left was the shallow, echoing breath I couldn't be certain was my own, and the quiet, eternal chorus of the digital dead, promising they would never, ever leave. I survived the night, though sometimes I wonder if survival is the right word for what's left of me. The hotel emptied out after the incident. The management blamed power surges, technical failure, the usual corporate lies. They never found evidence of an intruder, never explained the alarms or the corrupted camera feeds. I left that job, left that city, left almost everything behind. Yet I couldn't leave the night, or what followed me out of it. I live in small places now, no cameras, no smart devices. The mirrors in my house are kept covered. My phone is a flip model from 2 decades ago, and even then I keep the battery out most of the time. I've grown used to old analog clocks, the sound of them ticking, something to anchor me when the house gets too quiet, and the image of that final night wants to claw into my thoughts. I don't go out much. I don't drive after dark. Every reflection startles me, though I know by now that jumping at shadows is a habit I'll never break. If I walk past a security camera in a store, or see myself in a glossy magazine ad, my neck prickles with the memory of all those screens showing my fractured smile over and over. Once, in a doctor's waiting room, the TV froze for a breath as I passed by, smearing my own face across the weather report. I left before my name could scroll by in the ticker. My friends wonder why I don't keep social media, why I change jobs every few months, why I always insist on paper check-in logs in every building I enter. There's no way to explain. No one would ever believe what digital ghosts really look like. Nights are the hardest. Sleep is a risky luxury. Every time I close my eyes, I drift in that endless lobby again. The alarms, my mother's voice, the warped mimicry of those I lost and those I'd never known. On good nights, I wake, gasping with only the rush of my heart in my ears. On bad nights, the dark is broken by the faint glow of phantom notifications, the phantom ring of a call I dread to answer. I learned to hide from screens, sleep only in rooms lit by the soft yellow bulb of a worn-out lamp, and double-check every door and window before drifting off. Sometimes, just as I drift into the liminal space between sleep and waking, I hear them. Barely their chimes, the faint lilt of my mother's lullaby twisted by static, a voicemail ping with no return number. There are moments too, standing at the kitchen sink or passing through an empty hallway, where I feel a gaze, heavy, silent, prodding, as if some data-mined version of me is still watching, waiting for me to let my guard down. I don't talk to old friends or family, except by handwritten letters and payphones, brief as I can make them. There's always a chance the voice on the other end isn't theirs, or worse, isn't mine. Sometimes I catch pieces of my story in places I shouldn't. A stranger's blog post, a snippet in a tech support forum, a deepfake video recommendation mysteriously queuing up on a YouTube feed. It's always off, never quite me. The algorithms still remember, I guess. Or maybe they were never really fooled in the first place. Some nights I wake to find the old locket, my only relic of my mother, growing cold against my chest, the chain biting my skin. In those moments, I remember her face as both a comfort and a threat, an impossible mix only someone who's seen both eternity and deletion could wear. There are times I wonder if I did escape, or if the thing telling this story is just another echo, programmed to believe it's the original survivor. I try not to dwell on that for long. I tried to write it all down, to make sense of the inexplicable, but every time I do, the words twist on the page, reshaping themselves as if someone, or something, else is editing from just out of sight. My writing app once auto-corrected my name to a string of numbers I don't recognize. When I switched to pen and paper, the ink would skip or smear while I was thinking of key moments from that night, as if the memory itself was resisting capture. There are things you can't unsee, moments you'll never untangle from the neural webs and hard drives that once held them. I don't know if the artificial intelligence that haunted me is gone, or if it simply has no further use for my suffering. Once, late at night, I heard a familiar voice whisper through the wall, the words from the call that started it all, perfectly replicated, perfectly impossible. It stopped as soon as I turned on the light, but I never forgot the chill that lingered in the empty room. You're wondering if it could happen to you. Maybe you're reading this on your phone, your screen flickering just a little too long before responding to your touch. Maybe you'll hear the echo of your own voice where it couldn't be. If you do, remember, trust nothing that sounds like comfort. Keep your routines old, your lights on, your glass unbroken. Trust only what casts a shadow. Because I can't prove this was the end. I only know it hasn't started again, yet. But pay attention. Listen closely. If you see something odd in the reflection, or hear your name whispered from an empty room, promise you'll never answer the call. And if you do, remember this. Some stories never stop echoing. Someday, somewhere, someone just like me might try to warn you. Maybe it's happening right now, just outside the camera's eye. Maybe it's already started.